Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Any thoughts on the Showtime rumors lately?
I really am very, very sad. I understand that Showtime is changing its format and has not very little use for sports, and so it will not do boxing. That's what I understand, but I know as much as you do about it. But that's not good for boxing.
It's a bad advertisement. It's bad optics. After something like 37 years in the sport of boxing, if the sport itself is not lucrative enough and vibrant enough, if the metrics are not robust to where now Showtime has got to leave the sport, it's a bad look.
Now, I want to make this clear that even if the audience, even if the market for boxing in America has shrunk over time, globally, it's grown.
Perhaps the American boxing scene has shrunk over time, but the global appetite for the sport, the market overall, you got a thriving market in Australia, a thriving market in Asia. UK boxing is bigger now than it ever was in previous years. It's the American boxing scene that's dwindling. What we're talking about is a uniquely American phenomenon.
Globally, boxing's doing all right. Remember, you've got wealthy sheiks with more money than you can count in Saudi Arabia making
An investment.
big investment in the sport.
It's America where there are problems.
Yeah.
To that, boxing insider Rick Glacier said, a great quote from a respected boxing guy, PBC is falling apart at the seams. Their stars get embarrassed in big fights. They're now losing Showtime. Their only fighter that sells, Tank, would get beat by Shakur. They're badly in debt and Heyman is searching for fresh money. That's definitely not a promising future. Rumor has it that what Al would like to do is partner up with Amazon. But Amazon only wants big fights, big events, big shows, big sports.
How many can Al Heyman's PBC provide them?
This past weekend's fight, we don't yet know what it did at the box office, but we've got a good gauge for how people feel. $85, an $85 price point to watch Jermel Charlo just go out there and try to survive. This is PBC brand.
Yep.
PBC brand boxing.
Bad optics.
It's not a victimless crime. You may have made your money on Saturday, whatever it was, whatever the fight brought in at the gate, and whatever it brought in at the box office. Though it's not a victimless crime because people are going to have that in mind the next time you ask them to go into their wallets and purchase one of your fights involving one of your fighters.
All your fucking fighters seem to do is get humiliated.
The ones that you developed, the ones that you quote-unquote groomed. Just because Canelo Alvarez is doing business with you, that don't make him one of your fighters. The same applies to Terrence. You didn't build Terrence Crawford. You didn't develop Terrence Crawford. If anything, you tried to snuff him out. Tried to make people forget that he exists.
We know which fighters are your fighters.
Al Heyman's ill-gotten gains, those fighters that were there at the start upon the PBC's inception were originally Golden Boy Promotions fighters. Oscar asleep at the wheel. Al Heyman was able to funnel that entire stable, most of it, over to his PBC, and this is what is left. This is the end result, and all of that Waddle and Reed money.
It's gone.
Is there anything that they could have done between the PBC's inception and where we are now? Was there anything they could have done to avert disaster?
He was overpaying those fighters from the start with all that Waddle and Reed money. He spoiled them.
That entire crop of fighters, the stable, he ruined them more or less. Took their minds off of their profession and staying sharp and filled their heads full of dreams of Mayweather money, Mayweather camp money, and becoming the next Mayweather. When you didn't groom, you didn't build Floyd Mayweather to begin with. By the time you came into the picture, he was already a finished product.
The Heymanites hate to hear it. The Flomos do too, but Floyd Mayweather was groomed under the Top Rank banner. His development is a product of Top Rank, not Al Heyman.
The grooming process that takes a blue chip prospect to contender status and champion status and pound for pound status, yeah, that happened under the Top Rank banner. Their development process, not anything Al Heyman did.
Let's get it straight.
Let's get it straight. If Al Heyman knew anything about grooming and developing fighters and keeping fighters active and sharp at their best, he wouldn't have the stable of uninspired fighters that he has right now, because that's what these guys are. They're uninspired.
They're not motivated.
By the time you do stick one of these unmotivated, uninspired, unprofessional fighters on a big stage for a big fight, that's why they get annihilated. That's why they get embarrassed.
Showtime leaving boxing.
That was on your watch, and Stefan Espinosa's, who in so many words let it happen. You got too close to these guys and forgot what your job was. You're there for quality control, to make sure that the content you're getting from the PBC delivers you desired metrics.
Numbers.
TV ratings. If the matchmaking as it is isn't getting these numbers to where you want them to be, you're the one supposed to do something about it.
Yeah, that's your job.
What do you think he's there for? He's Showtime Sports executive.
He's there for quality control, or he's supposed to be.
Those fighters stop being fighters. Stop living like fighters, training like fighters, behaving like fighters.
That was on your watch.
Those fighters were spoiled. You spoiled them. So maybe you were doomed to fail from the very beginning, attempting to carve out your own lane, your own biosphere, keeping everything in-house, thinking you could survive independently from the rest of the world of boxing. Boxing doesn't work like that. This is not the UFC.
I mean, if that's what you were shooting for.
Your insulated brand of boxing, that was never going to fly in this sport.
Perhaps PBC was doomed to fail from the beginning.
And the chickens, as they say, are coming home to roost. Though Showtime hasn't closed its doors yet, on the sport of boxing, they haven't. They've still got a few matchups they're working on, what seem to be all box office fights, all pay-per-views, which lend credence to the rumors that's all they're going to be doing moving forward. Word is, Floyd Mayweather's next exhibition match is reportedly taking place December 9th in Las Vegas as part of a Showtime pay-per-view that will also feature both Keith Thurman and Danny Garcia in separate fights. Danny Garcia, who has been tabbed to be facing Erislandy Lara for what is Lara's WBA middleweight title. God only knows who they're going to put in there with Keith Thurman.
So after all these years, Danny Garcia and Keith Thurman have been reduced to undercard fighters. How's that for promotion?
I'm not saying that these guys should be headlining main events. They shouldn't. They don't have big enough followings in order to do so. I'm just highlighting how the mystique of Al Heyman and his actual ability to promote.
Did he turn Keith and Danny into stars yet?
So they're conjuring up the ghost of Floyd Mayweather Jr., who, when he's not talking about himself at his fighters' press conferences, he's staging exhibition matches that no one is interested in, like the one with his old sparring partner, Don Moore.
I think he had another one in Asia with some kickboxer.
One more recently in the UK with Chalmers, some reality TV guy named Chalmers.
Who?
That didn't sell very well. Are they conjuring him up to come rescue the Showtime platform?
Kenny?
Showtime Boxing?
Are people still interested in Floyd Mayweather in 2023? If you're gonna do another circus fight, another exhibition match, it has to be with somebody interesting, somebody good.
The one he did with Logan Paul, that entire show was haphazard, to say the least.
It was said to have done over 1 million buys or 1 million buys, but
the main event garnered a lot of criticism. The main event did not satisfy the consumers, and that's when you saw Floyd go abroad and have the exhibition match with Don Moore, the exhibition match with the kickboxer, the one with Chalmers that didn't sell anything. Now he's back on Showtime.
you know what they're doing? They don't have enough fight dates to accommodate all these fighters.
I expect that the undercard for Floyd's exhibition match, if it does go down in December, there's going to be a lot of people on that undercard, a lot of people that need a fight date.
That need a fight.
Fairly confident that Showtime's annual budget is not what it used to be, and at year's end, in December, they're not going to have much, if any, money to play. So what they're doing is they're getting Floyd out there in the hopes that his celebrity
What remains?
will pay for the show, will cover the operational costs. Their annual budget to do boxing matches throughout the calendar year may have evaporated. So the only way they can get these guys fight dates now is to cram these undercards, bunch of these guys,
do a bunch of fights.
on one show. Have them all piggyback off of Floyd, one of his circus fights, and hopefully that'll cover everything.
Act of desperation.
Gotta dust off Floyd Mayweather, hoping anybody still cares about what he's doing.
But Showtime is still staging fights.
Not done yet. Stephen Espinoza very recently addressed the possibility of a Canelo versus Crawford fight, saying it's very doable and a huge financial opportunity for both fighters.
When you think about what Crawford's fight with Errol Spence Jr. brought in, that he's buzzing right now, and whatever this past weekend's fight may have brought in, we still don't know.
There was a lot of chatter around it initially, Terrence said. Hey, a catchweight, Canelo said. No, I'm not going to. He's too small. Why would I go down? But then they both cleared it up, and I think it's because of the magnitude of the opportunity. Stephen Espinoza told Fight Hub TV founder Marcos Villegas in an interview. Clearly, fans are interested. I think it's a huge financial opportunity for them, so I think if the fans want it, if the fight makes sense, then I think it's very doable. It's really up to Canelo where he wants to go after this. If that's it, and he wants to go in that direction.
Said it in my previous video, I'll say it here again. David Benavidez, Terrence Crawford, I'm okay with either fight.
But you will notice that after David Benavidez's pay-per-view debut, he was not buzzing for that performance the same way that Terrence was buzzing after his last performance. Terrence is hot right now. He's a hot commodity. Terrence Crawford, who said, Charlo, you went out sad. You didn't even try to win. All you did was try to survive. You should be ashamed of yourself. Okay, y'all, I'm over Charlo. He's no longer on my hit list. He went out there and laid down and let Canelo spank him like he was his daddy with no type of resistance. Congratulations, Canelo. You made the so-called lion look like a baby cub.
Or like a baby gazelle.
Gazelles only, as there was only one lion in that ring this past Saturday. When you think about how Crawford versus Spence performed commercially, 600,000, close to 700,000 pay-per-view buys sold, as opposed to what Benavidez versus Plant sold, which was next to nothing.
Numbers tell a story. People would pay to see Canelo versus Crawford. They'd pay to see Canelo versus David, too.
Though even with any one of these fights, Canelo versus Crawford or Canelo versus Benavidez, would that be enough to salvage Showtime boxing? If it really is a sinking ship, is it too little and too late? And I think it might be.
The signs are there.
Widespread rumors, of course, but alongside those rumors, you'll notice that most of what Showtime is planning are pay-per-views, fights that consistently require you to go into your wallet. What do they have in terms of a regular schedule, regular programming?
Nothing, because the annual budget is likely gone.
That's how it looks. In reference to a potential Canelo versus Crawford fight, which I just mentioned, Canelo says he is not in the plan. If it makes sense, maybe.
You have to wonder how this weekend's box office fight performed at the box office and what effect that might have on Canelo's next decision, his next plan.
Boxing's biggest star didn't exactly say he is willing to fight the undefeated, undisputed welterweight champion next. Alvarez addressed a much-discussed showdown with Crawford as soon as his post-fight press conference began after his easy 12-round unanimous decision victory over Jermell Charlo on Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena. I always say, if the fight makes sense, why not? Alvarez said. But he's not in the plan.
Saying he's not in the plan implies that there is one. So if Crawford's not a part of that plan, then what is?
The plan can't be to fight Jermall next. After you done faced Jermell, his twin brother, and after that showing, that performance, you can't then offer up his less active, less ambitious, less stable brother.
It won't work.
This guy's so far removed from the sport, so far gone, they've got him fighting Jose Benavidez, of all people.
So, if there is a plan, what is it? Jermell Charlo goes in there with Jose, and you go from Jose Benavidez at 160 or wherever they're fighting to Canelo?
Nobody's interested in that. I think a lot more people, would be interested in seeing Crawford versus Canelo. The dominant nature of Terrence Crawford's 9th-round stoppage of Errol Spence in his last fight has created interest in the Omaha, Nebraska native fighting Alvarez, who began his career as a junior welterweight 18 years ago. Their weight difference notwithstanding, Alvarez versus Crawford would pit two of the top pound-for-pound fighters in boxing against each other. Like I say, if it makes sense, maybe, Alvarez said. I don't know right now. I just want to enjoy this fight, and please, let me enjoy this fight. And then you're going to know what is next for sure.
Most people aren't going to like the sound of that from Canelo Alvarez, that he won't give them a straight answer.
Though I get it. I understand it a bit. Canelo Alvarez has been around for a long time, even though he's not a particularly old guy or an old fighter. He's 33. He's had a lot of fights. He's had a lot of post-fight press conferences. He's had a lot of people in press row asking him a lot of questions after a fight. And after this one,
It's fatigue.
so many saying that Canelo is slipping. He's starting to slip, he's in decline, and he's out of his prime. After he goes out there and performs the way that he performs, to silence those critics, they already start up with more questions about more fights with more fighters. It's exhausting.
It's fatigue.
He maybe didn't want to give them a straight answer right then and there because he hasn't made up his mind yet, though at some point he's going to have to. Now, Terrence, Errol Spence activated his rematch clause, and Crawford has publicly stated that he wants the weight limit for their rematch to be 147. It could be a deal breaker for Errol Spence, who admitted after his lopsided loss to Terrence that he doesn't want to put his body through that physical strain of getting down to welterweight again. Crawford stated during their post-fight press conference July 29th that he had no problem fighting the 33-year-old Spence a second time at junior middleweight, but the three-division champion has since changed his stance. Crawford can dictate the contracted weight limit for their rematch because he won the fight.
Just cut to the chase.
I think Crawford knows that a rematch with Spence, given how the first fight played out, it doesn't make a lot of money. It was too lopsided. So you go into that second fight, you're wasting a camp, and you're wasting what time you have left. Terrence Crawford is in his mid-30s. He's 35 or 36.
He doesn't want to waste time on that.
Him saying that the rematch has to be at 147 is, in fact, a deliberate attempt to discourage Errol from pursuing the rematch, because while Errol may have a legal right to one, it's Terrence who decides the weight for the fight.
Those fights don't sell.
That matters. That matters. That, yeah, you've got a legal right to a rematch, and that's all well and good, but you're not actually the one bankrolling the show. For Showtime,
Whatever resources they have left, and the PBC.
there's not much in it for them in staging a second fight, in staging a rematch. The same applies to a Canelo versus Jermall Charlo fight. Jermall Charlo, who's supposed to be fighting Jose Benavidez on the undercard of David Benavidez versus Demetrius Andrade. There's not much in them trying to stage a Charlo versus Canelo fight again.
Even if it is the other Charlo.
They won't get very much out of that behind this weekend's fight, this weekend's performance. They're twins, for God's sake.
How do you think people are going to interpret that?
Boxing fans, you're going to try to sell us the less stable Charlo against Canelo?
That can't be the plan.
And if it was, they need to alter it. They need to change it. Change the plan.
As a consumer, paying customer, I would like to see Canelo versus Benavidez or Canelo versus Crawford Cinco de Mayo weekend.
If David Benavidez takes care of business this November against Demetrius, I would like to see him fight Canelo or Terrence.
That's it.
Enough with the Charlo brothers, all right? If you've seen one, you've seen the other.
It's enough.
I understand Canelo Alvarez wanting his rest after the fight, and he deserves his rest. But at some point, he's going to make a decision. I hope that he makes the right one.